On the edge of the most famous plateau in human history, modern man stood in a silent face-off with the greatness of his ancestors. Here, next to the pyramids of Giza, where time seems to have stopped 5,000 years ago, an idea was born that defied logic: to build the largest archaeological museum in the world, an enormous space exceeding 500,000 square meters, in a place that allows no mistakes and has no mercy on the hesitant. But the problem wasn't just the size. The ground itself was conspiring against any attempt to build. The site lies on a rocky slope that drops 50 meters in one go, as if you're building on the edge of a terrace leading into an abyss. The soil is a tricky mix of sand and limestone, capable of dragging any massive structure downward if the calculations fail or the execution falls short. Then came the most dangerous challenge. The museum didn't just have to stand. It had to stand at a specific viewing angle, with its walls perfectly parallel to the sides of the pyramids, a visual geometry that doesn't accept half measures. In 2002, all of this was just a dream on paper. Lines in the desert and engineering sections
This
that
intersection
seemed
doesn't align
unbelievable.
with the spec.
Then came the moment to turn imagination into reality, and the battle against nature began. This wasn't about building a structure. It was about writing new history next to history that must not be touched. The first step was removing the sand, as if the site were being uncovered from under a blanket thousands of years old. Millions of cubic meters of soil were taken out, massive excavation works that made the desert look like it was being emptied from within. And it wasn't just sand down there were hard rock layers that forced the equipment to shift from digging to breaking, and the hydraulic hammer started forcing a path open. And because the coming giant needed roots that could never be uprooted, the foundation stabilization phase began. Concrete piles were driven tens of meters down until they settled into solid rock, carrying unbearable loads. Inside
keep
those
it centered.
roots, steel networks
Slow
were
and
woven
steady.
carefully. Then concrete was pumped in at high pressure to push out air and guarantee strength. After that came the time for precise leveling, lasers reading the ground like they were scanning a surgical surface, preparing it to receive a base that would bear millions of footsteps and thousands of tons of history. The concrete pours went on without stopping, because concrete doesn't wait. Deep inside the mix, chemistry was generating heat, so it had to be cooled with ice to avoid cracks before it had even set. Then
Stress
came the
readings
testing
are holding
stage.
steady
Trial
at
loads
40
heavier than
megapascals.
expected, as
Good.
if the site itself
I'll
had to
log
pass
that
an
and check
exam
the
before it
lateral
was allowed to
stability.
carry this civilizational weight. And in the middle of all this, a one-of-a-kind paradox appeared. The statue of Ramses II did not wait for the building to be completed. The king arrived early, as if insisting on being present before the walls were finished. A massive block with an almost unbelievable weight moved
Maintain
centimeter by
trajectory.
centimeter with a
Adjusting
precision that prevented
articulation on
any
axle
vibration
3,
because a single
0.5
shutter
degrees.
could leave an unforgivable mark
Acknowledged.
on stone that's
Speed
thousands of
holding
years
steady.
old. Around the king, a special steel fortress was designed, a shield protecting him from construction dust and from the risk of falling equipment, while electronic sensors constantly monitored any movement around him. Once the king settled into his place, the metal forest began to rise. Tower cranes filled the horizon, as if the desert had pushed out its iron fangs. And even then, the war with water didn't disappear. Groundwater stayed on as an invisible enemy, fought with a pumping system that kept the foundations dry, as if the site were surrounded by an invisible wall. Then came the part that would define the identity of the place, the giant triangular wall. It wasn't just a wall, it was a concrete dam separating the plateau from the museum, bearing the pressure of thousands of tons of sand behind it. It rose day after day, using dynamic casting molds that prevented joints, forming as if it were carved in one continuous piece. Thousands of workers moved in strict coordination, every single rebar finding its exact place, and every small mistake treated as a major threat. The columns inside the project were anything but ordinary. Some reached heights of 20 meters, and their concrete pours had to be continuous to avoid cracks. To create wide exhibition spaces without central columns ruining the view, post-tensioning technology came into play. Steel cables inside the concrete
Hydraulic
were
jacks
pulled with huge
engaged,
force, so
pulling
that
the
the slabs
high-strength
turned into
steel
strong yet
cables.
slender surfaces,
This
thinner
process,
and tougher
known as
at the same time,
post-tensioning,
opening up the space for display, as if the building itself were breathing. From the heart of this mass, the grand staircase took shape the spine of the museum, a geometric ramp designed to carry statues, the weight of mountains, with precast steps installed with precision, each step calculated for a specific load, and
Little more
every
to the
lifting
right.
operation requiring
set
logistics
it down,
close to
easy.
military operations. The angle of
laser
the slope
level
was not left
confirms
to
the
chance.
angle is
It was designed to
precise.
create a perfect view of the artifacts and a comfortable flow for visitors, as
Perfect
if the path
alignment on
itself
this
were part
section.
of the story. The skeleton was completed, but the toughest challenge was waiting overhead, the roof. It wasn't a simple, flat surface, but a system of folded panels that mimicked the ripples of sand. Giant steel trusses were fabricated in specialized factories, and each connection was inspected as if it were a part of an airplane. Moving these pieces was a journey in itself. Trucks, road closures, and steel convoys, moving like they were transporting the bones of a mythical creature. Then came the riskiest dance, lifting the heavy pieces. Crawler cranes, capable of lifting hundreds of tons, hoisted components, sometimes with 2 cranes, raising a single piece in perfect sync, because any timing mismatch could turn the moment into disaster. At great heights, workers fixed the connections. Thousands of high-strength bolts tightened to a precisely defined torque. Vision alone wasn't enough. Ultrasonic waves inspected the welds to make sure they were clear of the tiny defects that could hide a collapse waiting to happen. On top of the steel came layers of concrete and insulation, because the Egyptian sun shows no mercy, and the artifacts inside needed a stable temperature, untouched by the fire of the day or the cold of the night. The roof wasn't closed off completely. Carefully designed openings were left to allow indirect natural light to enter, light that touches the space without harming the sensitive pieces. In parallel, another city grew inside the building, a huge conservation center, a hospital that treats history before it appears to the public. Delicate techniques prepare the artifacts so they're ready to live a new life behind glass. Then, the glass facade overlooking the pyramids appeared, a new challenge against wind, heat, and sand. It had to look transparent and light, as if it were floating, so thin tension cables were used instead of thick columns. After that came the southern masterpiece, a wall of translucent stone, countless triangles of Egyptian alabaster that let the light through. The stones were cut with high-pressure water and fixed onto steel frames, the way jewelry is set, forming a giant mosaic. At night, the facade turned into a luminous presence, a visual dialogue between desert and light. Inside the ceilings, the building's arteries were laid out. Cables, pipes, air ducts. Air conditioning here wasn't a luxury. It was a life support system for mummies and organic materials, with temperature and humidity stabilized with extreme accuracy, because any fluctuation could spell the end for a piece that has survived thousands of years. Even fire was treated as an enemy of heritage. The fire suppression systems didn't rely on water, but on inert gases that strip oxygen without touching the displays. With the network of elevators and escalators in place, the wide floors started to be poured and polished, and the corridors that would welcome thousands of visitors a day began to appear. Then it was time for the real residents, moving the massive statues into their spots. Statues weighing tens of tons moved inside the galleries on air cushions that reduced friction to the bare minimum. And special indoor cranes lifted stone sarcophagi the way you would lift heavy secrets out of the depths of time. Then came the moment the whole place had been waiting for, removing the protection around Ramses, so he could stand tall under the roof of his new museum, receiving visitors just as he did 3,000 years ago. With him, the display cases were prepared with almost invisible glass, strong and protective, and the process began of gathering the treasures of the young pharaoh, thousands of pieces to be displayed together in a single scene for the first time ever. Outside, another marvel appeared, a suspended obelisk, an idea that seems impossible until you see it. A huge block hanging in the air with precisely calculated loads and balance, allowing visitors to walk underneath it and see the king's cartouche from an angle that was never possible before. Around all of this, the desert was transformed into gardens. The infrastructure was prepared to welcome millions of tourists, and the lights glowed in night rehearsals that made the museum look like a jewel in the heart of the sand. As the cranes departed and the structure stayed standing with confidence, the final touches began. Every surface was polished, every corner checked, every system tested at full capacity. Thousands of minds and hands came together to create this achievement, while the pyramids watched in silence, as if measuring how worthy their modern heir was. Then, the tour begins. From the gate, rising through time, the kings of Egypt lining the path, and the grand staircase, leading the eye deeper into the story. At a certain point, the view opens up, and the pyramids appear from a new angle, a perspective that did not exist before this monument was built. Every detail speaks. Even the rare rain was accounted for, with drainage routed away from the walls. Solar power feeds parts of the systems, and the electronic brain runs the lighting and security, as if the building were a conscious being that breathes. The doors are approaching the moment they will welcome the world, From a barren desert, a new pyramid has emerged not of stone, but of knowledge and will. The symbolism of the triangle moves from the pyramids to this museum, confirming that engineering is the language of immortality. A new addition to Cairo's skyline, a landmark in modern architecture, and a salute to the unknown soldiers who tamed iron and rock beside the greatest witness to human history. With every sunrise, this building will tell the story of a civilization, as if history itself were beginning again at the foot of the pyramids.